Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us today at our virtual Stirring the Pot. This is our third one this season. And we have our fantastic Florence Fabricant, the host and curator of this series, and Jacques Torres as our special guest today. So we are so glad to have you all here. I want to give a very special thanks to our lead sponsor of Stirring the Pot, Chufo Cabinetry, who has been our lead sponsor since 2014 of this series. And to all of you for joining us, and also to Jacques Torres for offering a very special discount to everyone who's watching today, of 15% off his website for Jacques Torres chocolate, and the discount code is Stirring the Pot. So I will put that in the chat later, but just so you all know. After Florence and Jacques talk, we are going to open the floor up to questions from the audience. All you need to do to ask a question is type it into the chat feature, and then I will be asking it aloud to our guests. So again, save up your questions for the end, type it into the chat, and you will get an answer. So please welcome Florence and Jacques and enjoy.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me, see me. And it's really a great pleasure to welcome Jacques Torres to this series, because this is not the first time I've tried to get him on, because I know how interesting he is and how interested everyone is in sweet things, and especially in chocolate, but his schedule and our schedule seem to conflict. So here he is, and I want to welcome you, Jacques, and so appreciative for having you join us this morning.
Bonjour, Florence. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. You are someone that I highly regard, and your knowledge in the food industry, your knowledge of everything going on in our profession is amazing. And I always love the interaction with you, always.
Well, this is not about me. This is about you. And I'd like to start off, for those of you who may or may not be so familiar with Jacques' career, they may be familiar with his products, which are fabulous. But I'd like, Jacques, for you to take us through the trajectory of how you got to where you are right now. How did you start in pastry, and especially in chocolate?
I think I need to go back, quite far now. I just past 60, so I have to go back far. You can see behind me the picture of my mom and dad. My dad was a carpenter, and very young I decided that I will be a craftsman. I will create, and I will work with my hands. And carpentry was something that I was looking at. I love carpentry. My dad hurt his hands when I was quite young, so carpentry scared me. And then my brother was a chef, so I asked him if I should be a chef, where I should learn, and he directed me to the pastry shop. There was no good restaurant in Bandol, but there was a nice pastry shop. So I tried it during my time off school. I went on Wednesday and the weekend, and I fall in love with pastry. The smell, I don't know, the stickiness, the ambience, the getting up early, the noise. I mean, it's something about it. I do fall in love with it. And I entered an apprenticeship when I was 16. At 18, I passed my degree, went to the military for 1 year. At 20, I went to Nice at the Hotel Negresco with Jacques Maxime at Le Chantecler, who was one of the Michelin star, and Jacques Maxime was really a rising star at the time. So I worked with Jacques for 8 years. During this time, I started to learn about competition, learn more about pastry. I became what we call a meilleur ouvrier de France, or in English, I think the translation will be the best craftsman in my profession in France. And I won that competition in 1986. And
you were the youngest to have ever won it, is that correct?
I was the youngest at the time. I don't know, but it should be pretty close, because you need 10 years experience. And at 26, I was barely 10 years experience. So it's certainly pretty close. You know, if I'm not the youngest one, it will be pretty close. So I became an MOF at 26. At 28, I was looking for another challenge. The deal with MOF is that you don't supposed to take any classes. You don't supposed to do any competition anymore. And I want the adventure to continue. So I packed a couple suitcases and left for America. And, you know, maybe the best things I ever did. And I ended up working for the Ritz-Carlton in Rancho Mirage, next to Palm Springs for 6 months, and then in Atlanta for another 6 months. Then after that, Daniel Boulu and Sirio Maccioni give me a call, and they was looking for a pastry chef at Le Cirque. And of course, I know about Le Cirque. So I came for an interview, and I moved to New York. And I worked at Le Cirque for over 11 years. That was wonderful. I learned a lot. That's where I meet you, Florence.
Yes,
I think you liked.
That's when I stepped into the picture. When Jacques started at Le Cirque, we had at the times gotten wind of the fact that this hotshot pastry chef had landed in New York, and we wanted to know what was up with that. And of course, every time Le Cirque changed chefs, it made big news because it was one of the premier restaurants in New York at the time. And so I went over to Le Cirque and had a light lunch. And after lunch, Jacques paraded for me to taste. Somebody has to do it, right? More than 20 dessert specialties. I don't know whether the crème brûlée for which the Cirque was famous was his original, but that was among them. And then, of course, this chocolate stove. It looked like an actual stove, and it had little chocolate pots with little bits of sauce in them. I mean, it was the most amazing thing. But all of the desserts were just gorgeous and scrumptious. And so I did a story on that and have known and actually worked with Jacques ever since.
Thank you, Florence. You was, I think, the first person, the first reporter who write about what I was doing at Le Cirque. So it was a very, very exciting time for me. That was Le Cirque on 65th Street, a very, very small pastry shop that was pretty much a closet, a very busy restaurant. But I learned so much there. So I spent almost, over 11 years. And then I reached 40, and my guess was, what's next? What do I do next? I give pretty much everything that I had to that restaurant. And I was thinking about starting a business, but what business? You know, pastry, wedding cake, petit four, ice cream, chocolates. And I always love to work with chocolates. Or chocolate's always been a passion. So, you know, I decided that I will start a small business making chocolates. So I find a pretty bitter place in Dumbo, Brooklyn, and renovate it. So I did all the construction myself. I decided that I will not go in business like many chefs with investor, but I will build it myself. So I built that, take me a few months, and I opened that little chocolate manufacturer / little store, and I remember it was December 20 when Florence, you write about us, and so you came certainly in maybe end of November or beginning of December, and you asked me, say, are your store going to be ready? And I was like, oh yes, Florence, we will be ready. And so we work night and day to meet the date that I promise you will be open. And December 20 was when your article came out, we opened. And to my surprise, people came to Dumbo. At that time, a lot of chefs was thinking that that's it. I fell into the no man's land that was Brooklyn at the time, because at that time it was not popular for chefs to move to Brooklyn. Chefs from Brooklyn moved to Manhattan. Nobody was going to Brooklyn. That was interesting. So I opened that store, and then people start coming, and every Saturday it was a line in front of the door. I mean, oh my God, that was so heartwarming to see the result of opening that store, the result of the article that you write on the time, and that was the beginning of Jacques Torres chocolates, and that was exactly 20 years ago.
What's notable about Jacques Torres chocolate is not just how beautiful and delicious the praline and the chocolate bars and the cookies and all of that and ice creams were, but the deep knowledge that you had for chocolate and still have, and how you communicate that through your chocolates, and also just talking to you. I mean, I learned so much. You were among the first to start talking about percentages of cacao in chocolates and single origin chocolates and the differences. I mean, at that time, a chocolate bar was a chocolate bar, and people were not as attuned to how fruity one might be versus where you get notes of coffee or licorice and so forth. That's innate in the cacao. And you've made a real study of chocolate, haven't you?
Yes, it's again, chocolate was really a passion. And what's interesting is when you start learning about chocolates, you want to learn more. And you will dig more and more and more. And more you dig and more you see that this world is so wide, and it's so many things to learn between the origin, which are very important, but also what type of trees are growing into those origin, into those countries. Weather have a big influence. And then after that, the process is quite complicated, or yes, I would say quite complicated. And during the process, you can make so many mistakes, or you can have so many variation with the result of the product. The fermentation, that I have no say on that. I buy my beans already fermented and dried. So but that's already have an impact on the flavor of the chocolates. But then after that, when we receive them, we're going to go through a cleaning process, and then we're going to roast those cacao beans. So then the decision starts to be made, what temperature of roasting, what time, high roast, low roast, slow roast. That's going to really have a big impact with the flavor, the final flavor of the chocolates. And then when your cacao beans are roasted, you go into a process of, we call that winnowing. That means removing the shell from the nibs, the inside of the cacao beans. And then we start to make the chocolates. So what percentage of sugar we're going to add to those cacao beans? That's always very important. Usually, better the cacao beans, less sugar you're going to use. Sugar will help you to mask the bad flavor, basically, if you have cacao beans who are not that good. So I like, of course, like every chocolate maker, to put my hands on rare beans, white cacao beans, Criollo beans, Trinitario beans, and try to go around 75, 80% cocoa contents, because that's where you feel all the flavor of that chocolates. And that can be pretty magical if the beans are good. And then you go to a process of refining, conching. So you have more decision to take. Is it a long conching where you lose some of the identity of your cacao beans, or you're going to do a shorter conching, but you're going to get a little bit of the acidity, of the astringents of the beans, and then the chocolate is ready, and then you will do chocolate bar, you will do whatever you want to do with that chocolate. So a lot of room for mistake, but also a lot of room for putting your little touch and signature into those chocolate bar or into whatever batch of chocolates you're going to do with.
Well, to take it back a little bit for those in the audience who are not that familiar, basically the tree on which, or bush on which, that produces chocolate has these pods about the size of footballs hanging off, and they don't hang from branches like normal fruit. They just sprout out of the stem, and they can be in different colors actually. And then if you open them, inside, catch me if I'm wrong, Jacques, but inside are rows of kind of whitish, purplish beans that are kind of glued in there with some kind of thick, gloppy substance. And it's those beans that are removed, and they are often washed and dried and allowed to ferment before you even start the chocolate making. But those are the source of your chocolate. Is that correct?
Yes, that's how everything starts.
Yeah, and it's not. And there are basically three strains of chocolate trees. Forastero is the most common. It's the one that grows the fastest and produces the least distinctive of the cacao beans or cocoa beans. Then you have Trinitario, which has more distinction, and then the prize, which is mainly from South America, called Criollo. And each of these has different characteristics. Now, the other thing to talk about, I think, Jacques, is cocoa butter. And what is that exactly?
So it's actually, it's a very good question, because cocoa butter will be extracted from the cacao beans. So when you roast your beans, you can compress those beans and extract a little bit like olive oil, extract the fat that's in it. That's called cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is pretty much an oil, a vegetable oil, but it's solid at room temperature. It will come hard, 70, 80 degrees. It will be pretty hard. So a lot of time we use a little parts of that cocoa butter added to the chocolate that we make, 5%, 10%. And the reason to do that is that will make the mouthfeel a little bit more pleasant. So when you put a piece of chocolate in your mouth, that cocoa butter, that extra cocoa butter, going to help the chocolate to melt into your mouth and completely disappear. If you buy a chocolate that's not real chocolate, I think it's called coating chocolates, the cocoa butter was completely removed and replaced with other fat, other oil. And when you eat those chocolates or those fake chocolates, a lot of time this fat doesn't melt at your palate temperature, your mouth temperature, your body temperature. And because it doesn't really melt, that will coat your taste bud. That's what people talk about, a waxy chocolates. There is no wax in chocolate, but the result of that fat that doesn't really melt at body temperature give you the impression that was wax in it. So that's what we call coating chocolates. Cocoa butter is used in a lot of different things, including you can cook with it. It's also used in cosmetic for your skin. I understand that it's good for your skin. That's why I look so young, because of cocoa butter. But yes, it's something widely used.
Well, when we talk about buying chocolate, I think there are two considerations. Are we buying chocolate to bake or cook with it, or are we buying chocolate to eat? To buy chocolate to eat, which is, I think, what most people would like to do, what advice do you give people, Jacques?
The first advice that I will give you is, it's nothing wrong to like what you like. If you love a chocolate that you find at the supermarket and that's not pricey, but that's what you love, I don't want to take you away from that. It's some people prefer table wine than something a little bit more expensive or rare or whatever you want to call it. So look, my guess is whatever you love, whatever you enjoy is certainly what you should buy. I stay away from those, and I think we talk a little bit about that, Florence. When people make cookies, a lot of time you buy little piece of chocolates at the supermarket, come into a bag, and then you put that into your cookie dough. You bake your cookies. When the cookies come out of the oven, those chocolate pieces didn't melt. They still have the same shape. And I am amazed with that. A chocolate that doesn't melt in the oven at 350, 375 for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. I wonder what that chocolate's going to do in your stomach. That chocolate doesn't melt. That chocolate doesn't go anywhere. So my guess is chocolate is made to melt and to become, to coat your palate and and you swallow it and it's so good. So I don't like those chocolate that doesn't melt, and that's chocolate that doesn't have enough cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is the expensive part of the chocolates. So yes, it's less expensive. It has that cocoa flavor, but it's not really good. I don't, I stay away from that. And every time I give a class and people ask me about chocolate into my cookies, I use the same chocolate in my cookies that the chocolate I put into my bonbon or into my chocolate bar. I don't really buy a baking chocolate. Baking chocolate can be a chocolate with very little sugar and a lot of time very little cocoa butter. And that's the problem. If it doesn't have cocoa butter, it doesn't melt. So I try to stick with a pretty high-end chocolate or pretty good chocolate.
It's interesting. So in other words, a better chocolate chip cookie is one in which the pieces of chocolate are gooey when they come out of the oven.
Yes, and also
they melted. Yeah.
And they melt. You will see the chocolates on the middle of the cookies. That's, to me, that's quite important. I like to have that experience, that different layering into the cookies.
Well, when we're talking about chocolate to eat, though, and you see a percentage on the bar, what do you think is the best percentage if you like dark chocolate, but you don't want it too bitter or too sweet? What would you say, 70%?
I actually have my main chocolates, the chocolates that is the signature, the signature chocolate in my company is actually a 60%.
Oh.
So I didn't go so far as 70, and don't get me wrong, I love 70% cocoa contents. If it can be a very good chocolate, but I try to please as many. I need to sell my product. I try to please as many people as I can and have a wider audience as much as I can. And I think that 60% will be the percentage that customer will go for, will love. So I go for that. I go for a 60%. And then, you know what? A lot of time people ask me, what chocolate do you eat? What is your favorite chocolate? And really, it really depends on what time of the day. On the afternoon, when, between lunch and dinner, you have that little craving, you want to eat something, you want something a little bit rich, I will go maybe for a milk bark, a piece of milk chocolates or dark milk chocolates with nuts. And I love to have that. It's very satisfying at that time of the day. If I am on the evening at home and I don't know, watch a movie with my wife, or we're just discussing on the sofa, whatever, I will have a higher percentage dark chocolates. I will get a 70, 80% with different origin. So that's the chocolate for that time. For the afternoon will be another chocolate. So it's easy to say, I want a chocolate factory. It's easy to have all those chocolates at home. But this is my answer. When people ask me what chocolate do I love, it's not always the same percentage.
What is white chocolate exactly?
White chocolate is interesting. White chocolate is a lot of sugar, cocoa butter, milk powder, vanilla, and lecithin. So why it is called chocolate? It's called chocolate because white chocolate contains quite a bit of cocoa butter. Cocoa butter comes from the cacao plant. So because that is no other fat than the cocoa butter, and because that, we are allowed to call it chocolate.
Nice.
But it doesn't contain any cacao. That's why the color. As soon as you put cacao into this combination of sugar, milk powder, cocoa butter, milk powder, and sugar, as soon as you put some cacao, then you get milk chocolates. So milk chocolate is pretty much white chocolate with cacao, with, I should not say cacao, but with cacao beans, where we didn't remove the cacao portion of it. And dark chocolate is just a combination of cacao nibs or cocoa liquor. Cacao nibs, when you grind them, become what we call cocoa liquor. So if you use cocoa liquor with sugar, lecithin, and vanilla, maybe a little bit addition of cocoa butter, you get dark chocolates. So one contains just the basics, the sugar, the cacao beans. One contains milk powder, and the other one will remove the cacao.
But aren't there cheap white chocolates made without any cacao butter?
So yes, and it's not called white chocolates. It's interesting. I had that discussion with my wife, I think, a week ago, and I think it's called, Asti, do you remember the name of it? Candy Melt, and the other one is Birkins. So those companies make those products that pretty much like fake chocolates use fat that is solid at room temperature, mixed with milk powder, sugar, and then you get something that's going to taste a little bit like white chocolate, but is no cocoa butter in it. So, you know, I like to, basically it's buying, it's not that good, and it's like buying fake wine. You know what, if I'm going to have a glass of wine, I'm going to have real wine. So I don't use those products, yes.
So let's go on to cooking, because there are certain things that happen to chocolate when you heat it. It does burn pretty readily, and also, what about what happens when you add liquid to melting chocolate?
Okay, when you put liquid, you know that water and oil doesn't mix. Water and fat doesn't mix. When you put liquid into the chocolate going to seize. We dry that chocolate so well. We don't want any moisture in it. We want a long shelf life with pure chocolate. Immediately you reintroduce some water, that chocolate going to absorb that water. It doesn't going to mix with the fat portion of the chocolate, and the chocolate going to seize. So you can do pretty much nothing. When that happens, it's over. The chocolate is, you cannot use it to melt. You can still do a drink with it. You can make a hot chocolate. You can do other things, but you cannot melt it and do something, a molding or a dipping or things like that with it.
So you have to be really careful about that.
Yes, that's why when I melt chocolate, if I'm home and I melt chocolates, I will use a microwave, because it's dry. You don't have any moisture in the microwave. You have to be careful when you use a double boiler. Double boiler work perfectly. There's nothing wrong with it, but very low heat, and then stir, and be careful that the moisture doesn't come into your chocolates. Chocolates and water doesn't mix. And
unless you have a lot of moisture, like,
yes,
you know, there are recipes that call for melting chocolate within milk, for example, or melting chocolate in some other liquid. If there's enough of the liquid, the chocolate won't seize up and make it become clumpy.
Yes, and then that's where you want to create an emulsion, and that's what we call maybe a ganache. The ganache is the filling of the chocolate that we have into those little bonbons. That's called a ganache. A ganache can also be something to cover a cake. or even a chocolate sauce where you're going to go a little bit more liquid than that. It's always a little bit tricky to be sure that the fat and the water will blend together. And you can use maybe an immersion blender. You can use different tools to help you with that. But you're right. If you put a little bit of moisture, the chocolate will seize. If you put enough, then it's another product.
Well, I have to tell everybody that on the Guildhall newsletter this coming week, there's a recipe from Jacques that I found to be just incredible, because it's one recipe that you can use to make a chocolate mousse or a chocolate souffle. And it is one of the simplest recipes that I have ever seen for chocolate mousse. There's no cream in it. I have made some, and it's in this glass now, and it's just a perfect texture, light, delicious, not too sweet. I would love to share it with everybody, but you can make it at home. And it just involves melting chocolate in some hot milk, enough so the chocolate just melts, and then adding an egg yolk, and then whisking your egg whites and folding them together there's a little sugar in the egg whites, and that's all it takes. And then you can bake it like a souffle and have individual chocolate souffles ready in 15 minutes. I'm telling you, it is amazing. Thank you, Jacques, for this recipe. Did you develop it yourself, or did you learn it from somebody? What's the background?
Over the years, look, I am a chocolate mousse lover. And the most simple chocolate mousse will be just a mixture of whipped cream, soft peak, and chocolates. It's a little bit tricky because the temperature can make the chocolate seize. It's very simple, but I don't have the lightness because the cream that I really like. So I love the one that I give you made with egg white. This is the other big family of chocolate mousse. One is with cream, the other one with his eggs. And so I put only one egg yolk to get a little bit of that fat, and actually the lecithin that's inside the egg yolks to bond everything together. And the lightness of the egg white. And I put few drops of lemon when I whip the egg white. And the lemon going to help you to stretch those protein inside the egg white so they don't break down. So it's a little bit easier to fold. The egg white doesn't come too dry when you use that, when you use the lemon. So this is one of my to-go chocolate mousse when if I have friends coming home, if I go somewhere and someone want a recipe like that, I memorize it and it's very easy to do.
It is. It's just amazing. And it's a recipe that I call a keeper, and I will use it again and again. And again, with the souffle possibility, you just have to remember one recipe, and it's very easy to know. And if, it calls for egg whites and an egg yolk that are basically uncooked, but if you're at all nervous about that, I would first of all recommend using organic eggs because I think they're safer. I started using organic ingredients first with chickens and eggs. Then the other thing you could substitute would be pasteurized egg yolks and egg whites, which are sold in supermarkets, or reconstituted powdered egg whites, which also work very well. And Jacques, let me ask you this. Have you ever used faba, the liquid from chickpeas that can be a substitute for egg whites? Have you ever tried that in the recipe?
Actually, I heard about it. I'm very interested to it. I love chickpeas. I never try it. So this is something that eventually I will try, eventually I will do. But I never really play with it.
It's called aquafaba. And
Okay.
I've made mayonnaise with it, which is pretty amazing.
So I just have to try it. This is one of those things that.
With. Yeah. So how many different kinds of chocolate products do you produce now and sell online?
Oh my God. If I don't really know how many different products. We have quite a bit of a line of product between all the flavor of the. Oh, that's funny. One of the toy of my son just started singing. I don't know exactly how many of product we have, but we have quite a bit of a collection. It's easy to find out in our website, mrchocolate.com, and you will see all the different flavor of bonbon, all the ice cream, all the cookies. We do some gâteau de voyage, little cake that we cover with chocolate also. I mean, we do quite a bit of those products. And as you know, when you're a chef, you get bored doing the same thing, so you want to do something else, something new. So we do new product.
Now, what are your new products coming up for, let's say, the holiday season?
So for the what did we do this year? We are coming up with a new chocolate box. We do plaques on the middle of the box where people can wish happy birthday, happy holiday. We have sleeves where when you buy a box of chocolate, you can really celebrate with it.
In other words, have a personal message.
Yes, we can customize also boxes with message. We put little we assemble letters on top of a chocolate box where you can give a message to someone. We use emoji, something that I love to use. It's always fun. A lot of different products. I just received actually a couple of weeks ago. We have a cacao plantation in Yucatan, Mexico, and the last harvest I received 300 kilo of cacao beans, and we just plant high-hand cacao beans. It's not 100% Criollo, but it's a high percentage into those three of Criollo. It's a mixture of Criollo and Trinitario, going toward the Criollo, a lot of white beans. So I'm going to do also a chocolate bar with that, roasting them at low temperature to keep as much as the flavor as I can of those beans. When you look, it's so rare that when you put your hands in those beans, I cannot wait to roast them, and I cannot wait to make the chocolates with it. And the chocolate actually is less dark than a regular dark chocolate. It has that milky color, but there is no milk in it. That's because there is a lot of white beans I need to send you some of those chocolate bar when they are done. Certainly 75 to 80% cocoa contents. And
here's another question. Who is actually growing the chocolate? Is this like a cooperative, or do you just hire people? How is that arranged?
I have a long relationship with a company called Belcolade. Belcolade is part of Puratos, which is a big company who sell product to bakers, and they are all over the world. And Mr. Van Bell, one of the owners of Puratos, has a passion for everything chocolate and everything history, Aztec, Mayan. So he and Puratos, Belcolade, purchased a big piece of land in Yucatan, Mexico. And what's interesting is in Yucatan, there is a lot of cenote, a lot of water underground, those big caves where people can go swim, and there is a lot of water. And that piece of land is over cenote, so we can actually get water from the cenote and water the tree. So we are few chefs, few chocolatiers who lease a piece of land. And so we have a few acres, 10 acres of land, and we have about 5,000 trees. And I want to expand that because this is also a legacy that I want to leave behind me. I want to leave those good DNA cacao tree. one of the things that's happening lately is more and more of the cacao grower, going to plant something called CCN 51, which are a hybrid tree who produce a lot more cacao pods. They are not too big, they don't need shade. I mean, those trees are magical trees. The only problem is the cacao, the quality of the cacao is not there. So a lot of farmers are cutting all those good trees with great DNA and grow something that's going to grow faster, make more cacao beans, but is not as good. And people like me are running over, we are really looking for those good and high quality cacao beans. So we want to preserve those trees. So that's my way to preserve the trees, actually to plant them and keep them. And interesting fact, inside the plantation, we have Mayan ruins. So when I go there, I always go and we find few matate. So I find that amazing that out in nature, you find those Mayan ruins.
Well, one last question before we go to questions from viewers, and this may put your feet to the fire a bit, but there's a lot of talk in industries like chocolate growing and coffee and so forth about fair wages for the workers. Where do you stand on this?
Definitely. So actually, when we did that plantation with the help of the partner, Mr. Van Bell, and the help of the partner, we actually, if I remember correctly, triple the going rate into the area, because we want people to be excited. We want cacao beans that have a certain quality. And by giving them more money, we know that they will be here tomorrow. They will keep growing those beans for us. I am not in Yucatan taking care of those beans. I cannot do that. So by paying people there enough, we know that it will be a tomorrow, it will be a legacy with those trees. And we can sell those beans enough money to give more money to the grower. The deal is there. If you have a good quality cacao beans, customers are happy to pay a little bit more. So why not paying those beans for more money? The Belcolade actually has something called Trace, what's the name? Cocoa Trace. Hasti is next to me, she's helping me with that. I don't always remember those names. So Cocoa Trace is what Belcolade is doing. So Belcolade also buy cacao beans from different growers. And they tell the grower, they say, look, we're going to help you. And we're going to teach you how to get better cacao beans. And we're going to give you more money when you bring us, when we buy from you. And we will buy only if the quality is the quality that we are looking for. And then after that, we'll give you another 5% of the price of those beans just to keep for your family. So farmers get excited to come back to the business of growing cacao beans and get excited because now they make enough living. The deal is with no grower, we cannot have any chocolates. So we need to pay those growers more. We need to be sure that they get enough money to get education and to keep doing that tomorrow. That's very important. And I stay a little bit away from African beans because you never know what's going on. It's very difficult to know what's going on in a country like Ivory Coast. There is still kids in plantation. There is still dirty things happening. So we really try to limit or to not work with the country where we know those things happen. It's not an easy thing because it can be shortage of cacao beans, but it's what we have to do. This is the right things to do.
Well, that's reassuring. And on that note, Jennifer, do you have some questions for us?
I do. First, I just want to say that one person had asked, can you post a link to these chocolate recipes, please? And it is now up on our website, on the Guildhall website, the chocolate mousse / chocolate souffle recipe from Jacques Torres. So if you go to guildhall.org facebook.com/stirringthepot@home. That's where you can get that recipe right now and have some like Florence was eating, which looked delicious. And I also want to remind everyone that if you now are extremely craving chocolate, which I'm sure you are, we have for everyone watching today, very special 15% discount code. The discount code is Stirring the Pot. If you go to mrchocolate.com, you can order some there. So our first question is from Andrea. And she said, chocolate has possibly one of the biggest followings of all foods globally, with fan groups, chocolate clubs, chocolate destination tours, and even chocolate poetry clubs. Why do you think chocolate inspires such devotion and creativity, more sensual and evocative than almost any other food?
I don't know if Florence might be able to answer that question better than me, but let me give it a try here. Chocolate is a product that has a huge history, over 5,000 years. So this is quite amazing. I used to have a museum in my store at Hudson Street, and one of the pieces was a replica of a little mortar that was fine. And by looking at the age of that mortar, it was over 5,000 years. And we find inside the mortar some remain of cacao beans. So it's such a mystic product. Those cacao beans was quite mystic. It was a currency at the time of the Mayan. It was a drink that people was drinking before a wedding to get power. You don't want to you want to look good with your new wife, but also that people will drink before going to war to give you extra power. So again, it's quite, cacao was quite magical, or it was giving to cacao those magical belief. And I think that over the time, maybe some of those beliefs stay with us. Is chocolate an aphrodisiac? Is chocolate give you power? Is chocolate give you energy? You know, all that. And maybe it's why also look, pretty much every gender, every race, every age love chocolates. I don't know what other product is like that.
Well, you know, it might pay to compare chocolate to coffee. Now, everybody knows that coffee contains caffeine. And caffeine is a nerve stimulant, and that's what keeps you up and so forth. Chocolate has a little bit of caffeine, but mainly the property that chocolate delivers is theobromides. And those compounds are supposedly muscle enhancers, which is why the Aztecs and the Mayans would consume chocolate. It was sacred. And it was something that was given to warriors before they went to battle and that kind of thing, because chocolate is a stimulant, but not the same kind of stimulant as caffeine and in coffee. It's more of a muscle stimulant than a nerve stimulant. And I think that the whole sacredness of chocolate, which is what the Europeans learned when they first arrived in Mexico, I think some of that, as you said, has transferred into the whole magical view that chocolate has in the world.
We didn't talk about the effect also of chocolate in your brain. Chocolate is a mood elevator. Chocolate makes you happy, and maybe also that help with people loving chocolates. So between the muscle stimulants, the caffeine, mood elevator, and whatever you want to believe about chocolates, that made that chocolate is loved by a lot of people.
It's a legal drug. Do we have another question, Jennifer?
Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Sandy asks, do white cocoa beans make a white shaded chocolate?
So it's interesting. White cacao beans will actually make your chocolates a little bit more clear. almost like a dark milk chocolates. So it's not completely dark. It has a little shade of milk chocolates. And also you have less astringents, less bitterness into those beans. They're pretty rare, they're pretty difficult to grow. And the problem with those beans is that, of those cacao pod, you will get less pod per trees. So it's all selection. When you have a plantation, you want to be sure that the tree that you select are going to be grafted over very strong roots, and going to give you enough cacao beans to be able to have a harvest. In the wild, the Criollo are smaller, and you pretty much cannot have a harvest in the wild with those pods.
The white beans, is that what's called porcelana?
Yes, it's some of the white beans. There is different white beans, and porcelana is one of them. It's very well known in Venezuela. And porcelana is, again, one of those very rare cacao beans. And again, when you can put your hands in beans like that, it's great, because it's very rare, and you're not going to find much of them. So it's a fun thing to put your hands on it, and to explore, and to try, and to try to make the best, or the best as you can, chocolates.
Okay.
Our next question, yes, is can you talk about your time on Nailed It and some of the craziest things you've eaten?
A lot of bad cakes. Oh my God. You know, I was on TV Food Network and PBS years ago, about 20 years ago. And I was a chef behind a table, and I was showing how to make a centerpiece, how to do things. I was really walking in front of a camera. And then things change on TV. Then reality TV start, and then we start to see a lot of drama into the kitchen, and all those competition show. And that was not something that I like. So I was out of it for almost 20 years. I mean, I don't know for how many years, but for quite a bit. And then I get that offer to be on a show where nobody going to cry. It's not going to be any drama. I will judge. I will give real advice. But again, no drama. Everybody is happy. Someone go home with $10,000, and everybody will have a good time. So I give it a shot. And that was, I think, 4 years ago. And that was the first episode of Nailed It. And I have to tell you that we have so much big laugh with Nicole taping this show. I see things that I never see. Of course, I never see that in a kitchen. But I kind of love the message behind the show, which is, don't be afraid of being in the kitchen. Don't be afraid of messing up a cake. Most likely the cake will still be edible. Have fun in the kitchen. I think that's very important. Otherwise, you're not enjoying doing it. Bake with your kids. Do what you can, but you know, have fun. Now, crazy thing that I see people mistaking sugar and salt and giving us that to eat. I eat underbaked cake, overbaked cake, super dry cakes, cake with no buttercream. I mean, name it. Cake with more fondant than cake. I mean, I can go on and on. I have to say that Nicole is a wonderful host. She's funny, and she really put a great twist into the show. She make it very interesting, and I'm the person who's going to give some real advice. What the advice that I give are real, and you can follow those advice. I do that for a long time, so I think I can give those advice. But we have fun doing it. It's a fun show.
So we have Carlos asks, as a follow-up to the mood elevator conversation, have chocolate sales done well during the pandemic?
You know, what I read, it didn't go well for us. Let's say that. All my store was closed. I have only 2 stores reopen, and New York is very slow. I have to say that New York is very slow. Online has a boost. Definitely online work a lot better. But I think that overall chocolate sales was higher than the year before. So it looked like people did eat a lot of chocolate during the pandemic. It's just for us to find a way to deliver that chocolates and to find a way to sell it to people who still eat chocolates. That's where the challenge is.
Also, at times of economic downturns, recessions, and so forth, it's been shown that so-called gourmet foods, but food indulgences keep selling because it's a lot cheaper to buy a couple of chocolate bars than a new handbag. And if people want to indulge themselves, buying some chocolate is really instant gratification, not that expensive compared to so many other things, and really easy to consume. So there's good reason why chocolate sales would be up.
You see why I love to be there with Florence? She's a great, she can sell. My God, Florence, thank you.
So I've got another question from Neil. Chocolate goes so well with another flavor. In fact, it could even be enhanced when juxtaposed against another flavor, mint, raspberry, coffee, etc. Any favorites you can suggest?
It's true that chocolate will pair with a lot of things. I love to do chocolate and wine tasting. I love to pair chocolate with a lot of things. It's not many things that doesn't go with it. But I have to say that that's where the percentage of chocolate becomes very important. You have sometimes to match a flavor with a certain percentage of chocolate. So if the chocolate is too bitter or too sweet, it might not go. So you will have to adapt how sweet or how bitter your chocolate is with certain flavor. You're also going to look at some flavor to go together, like chocolate and nuts, chocolate and caramel. Those flavors kind of match and go together. And some flavor are going to clash together, like chocolates and lemon, chocolate and passion fruit. But if you put the percentage, if you hit the percentage of chocolates right, then it's magical. Then it's actually good. So two schools there. One where the flavor go together, and another one where the flavor are going to clash, but give you a great result.
Well, to add to that, it's been shown that vanilla, just a little vanilla, brings out the best quality of chocolate, which is why you'll find a little vanilla in a lot of chocolate products, for one thing. But the other, my personal favorite, which is less common, is chocolate and ginger. And if you dip slices of candied ginger in dark chocolate, I mean really dark, like 90% or even unsweetened, it becomes, for me, the most amazing confection.
I need to send you some of those, Florence. We do some pretty good candied orange and candied ginger. And I find a place in Aix-en-Provence. I went and I visited. I like to visit the places where I'm going to buy things from. And these companies sell chestnuts. During the holiday, they will candy chestnuts. But as you know, chestnuts in France, marron glacé, sell only during the holiday. So during after Christmas, they start candying oranges, grapefruits, ginger. So I visit them and I was amazed by the quality of their product. To me, this is the manufacturer in Europe, in Provence, in Aix, who make the best candied oranges. So we buy a couple pallets at a time. And when we receive that in our manufacturer, that's what we're going to enrobe with chocolates. Really a good product.
If you've never tried to candy oranges or grapefruits and the peels, you are in for a lot of work. I'm warning you. There are recipes, but you've got to cook the fruit in sugar syrup, let it dry, cook it again, let it dry at least 3 or 4 times to get a good quality product. They're also, the town of Apt, which is near Aix, is also known for les fruits glacés.
Yes, and they do actually strawberry, which is very difficult to make. Melons, who contain a lot of water, so the heat have to be very, very slow. I mean, it's an art, and it's very interesting. This art of canning fruits. Now I'm talking about strawberry, melon, all those kind of fruits, peaches, apricots, came before the refrigeration exists and before freezer exists and before the fruits was coming from the South Hemisphere during the winter. You know, now you get melon all year. I mean, it's amazing, but it used to not be like that. So before that, people used to preserve fruits in sugar, canning fruits. So that became part of the culture. People start to develop a love for it. And now that we can get strawberry almost all year, we don't need to candy them anymore, but you still have around Nice or around Aix, you will find those manufacturers that still do those products. And there is a big clientele who, for generations, love to eat those type of foods. Less in America, more in Europe. But you know, I think that's the reason why, is because at one point, that was the only strawberry or peaches that you can eat during the winter was those preserved in sugar.
Well, that brings up one other issue that we did not cover at all, and it's very popular, is the chocolate dipped strawberry. Now, I personally dislike them, mainly because they're usually made with big tasteless strawberries. And if you are here in on the east end of Long Island, and you get farm fresh strawberries in June, you can't really dip those in chocolate because they're too fragile. So I am kind of anti-chocolate dipped strawberry. What is your feeling, Jacques?
Look, do I eat them? Very rarely. You have a big clash of wetness and hard shell chocolates when you bite into it. So I would be more inclined to eat a strawberry dip into a ganache, where it's going to give you a lot better mouthfeel, but doesn't look as good. So this is a product that my customer want for Valentine. And this is the worst time of the year to buy strawberry. I mean, you can imagine middle of February, where do you find strawberry that when you cut them in half, they are not white inside? Because that's what you find at that time of the year. When you bite into them, they are white inside. So I call a couple company that grow strawberry, including Driscoll, and months before, and talk to them about securing, I don't remember the number now, but boxes and boxes and boxes and cases of strawberry for Valentine, because every chocolatier in America will try to put their hands on it. So you have to buy that and prepay that months before, and be sure that, again, they are ripe strawberry and they are strawberry with taste. And most likely they will come from Mexico. They will come from, I don't know, maybe for us, Florida, but certainly Mexico. So that's certainly where they come from. But it's pretty difficult to find good strawberry at that time of the year. So you have to find two things against you. First, it's not the best product. And two, the strawberry are lousy. So what can I do, other than trying to find great strawberry?
Do we have more questions, Jennifer?
We have 2 more questions. One is from Janine. Which of your chocolates do you recommend for use in chocolate chip cookies? We
have some package of 2 pounds of what we call pistol, or they are round pieces of chocolates. It's not an expensive product. It's a 60% cocoa content, enough cocoa butter. It's a to-go chocolate that we sell. You can melt it, you can mold it, you can make ganache with it, and you can actually put it into your chocolate chips cookies. So it's a good chocolate. It's not the most high-end chocolate that I can sell, but it's a good chocolate. It's very fair. It's a great chocolate for chocolate chips cookies.
And our last question is from Neil. He says, I find that a chocolate cake that juxtaposes a soft ganache or mousse with a crunchy base also enhances the dessert. Oui?
So I try to understand the questions. I'm sorry. So a soft ganache over a cake, you say?
He is saying that he finds that if you have a cake that juxtaposes different textures, soft ganache or mousse with a crunchy base, that it enhances it.
So look, that's my belief. And from the time that I was at Le Cirque, actually, from the time, Florence, that I send you all those desserts, I always try to have contrast in my desserts. 3 different contrasts. Texture contrast, so that's what you mentioned. Flavor contrast, and temperature contrast. So if you can put those 3, or at least 2 out of 3 into a dessert, if you don't make any mistake, my guess is you can have a pretty good dessert. That's where maybe the crème brûlée always have such a big success. You have a crunchy top and such a delicious cream inside. And then, you know, sometimes also, if the crème brûlée is hot on top and cold on the bottom, then now you have contrast in temperature, contrast in texture. And I can mention quite a bit of my favorite desserts who have those contrasts. So I always look for that. As a chef, I always look to create contrast into a dessert. You don't want a boring dessert with the same texture everywhere or the same flavor everywhere. You want something that excites you.
Those are all our questions for now.
Well, this has been quite fascinating. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did, because I always learn something from our guests, and this was no exception. And I really appreciate the time that you've taken on a Sunday morning, Jacques, to be with us. And I also appreciate our audience for tuning in, and look forward to being able to resume Stirring the Pot live, maybe next season.
And remember that we have a 15% discount in mrchocolate.com, and the password is actually in Stirring the Pot. So please, you know, visit the website and eat a lot of chocolate. It's good for you. Thank you, Florence. Always a pleasure to talk to you.